Her right arm consisted of small scattered bruises.
And if we could have photo 7770. What are we seeing here?
This is an image focused on her right leg. Here we see 3 bruises on her knee and 2 bruises on her left lower leg. This is a site of medical intervention, the intraosseous catheter site where the needle enters the bone.
And if we could see 7790, please. What are we seeing here?
This is a photo, a close-up photo of her left leg. Again, we can see a bruise here as well as a bruise here on her left lower leg.
And then the last photo.
It's an object used to apply external force to the neck, and a strangulation is when it is done by someone else.
And when that happens, what effect does it have on the body? How does it, what is the mechanism of death?
Ligature strangulation results in a category of asphyxial type of deaths. Asphyxia means that the body is deprived of oxygen, and in this case, specifically the brain. So when you have compression on the outside of the neck, blood is how oxygen is delivered throughout our body. So the right side of the heart delivers blood to our lungs, where during breathing and respiration, we then put oxygen to our multiple blood. Variables to consider in a case-by-case basis: the type of ligature used, the force of the ligature used against the neck, as well as the intensity and duration of the altercation. However, in situations where there's complete oxygen deprivation, loss of consciousness can occur as early as 10 to 30 seconds, with brain damage beginning at the 1-minute mark and irreversible brain damage and subsequent death occurring around as early as 5 minutes, again with the caveat that there are variables that might accelerate or decelerate that time frame.
Is there a type of...
Before we get into the testimony, pay close attention to what the medical examiner is actually saying, because this courtroom exchange is about to move from visible injuries to one of the most critical questions in the entire case: how those injuries could relate to the cause of death. The witness begins by identifying abrasions and bruising on the neck, arms, and legs, but the testimony quickly becomes much more significant when the examination turns to the horizontal ligature furrow around the neck. The prosecution is not simply asking what the injuries look like. They are building a medical explanation for what those findings may indicate. And then comes the key testimony. The witness says the neck findings, combined with significant hemorrhages, are consistent with ligature strangulation. From there, the court hears an explanation of asphyxia, oxygen deprivation, pressure on the blood vessels of the neck, and the potential progression toward unconsciousness and irreversible brain injury. But there is an important distinction here. Medical testimony can explain what injuries are consistent with, while questions about exactly how and when an event happened can involve other evidence. That distinction becomes especially important as this questioning continues. And near the end of this excerpt, the courtroom suddenly shifts gears when an attorney attempts to bring up a prior statement from the witness. So listen closely, because this is no longer just about injuries. It is also about testimony, credibility, and what the jury is ultimately allowed to consider.
What are we seeing here in terms of injuries?
In this photo, we are looking at the front of the neck, again focused on the ligature furrow, which is this distinct linear area of pallor, and on the front of her neck, the lower half of this ligature furrow had scattered red abrasions associated with it.
You can take down the photo. What are abrasions in terms of what you do?
So abrasion occurs when there is sufficient friction against the skin to cause a removal of the superficial layer of the skin.
Is it basically a scrape?
Yes.
And can we have photo 2256, please? You can tell us what we're looking at here, please.
This is a close-up photo of the back of the neck. Here is the linear area of pallor with the distinct superior and inferior linear edges. You can appreciate that the linear edges in this photo started to develop linear bruising.
And were there other injuries on the body other than those on the neck and the face?
Yes, she had injuries to her right arm and on her legs.
And if I could show you photograph 7789. Are you able to tell us what we're looking at here?
This is an up-close photo where we can see a very small, faint bruise. All of the bruises on her legs as well as her right arm consisted of small scattered bruises.
And if we could have photo 7770. What are we seeing here?
This is an image focused on her right leg. Here we see 3 bruises on her knee and 2 bruises on her left lower leg. This is a site of medical intervention, the intraosseous catheter site where the needle enters the bone.
And if we could see 7790, please. What are we seeing here?
This is a close-up photo of her left leg. Again, we can see a bruise here, as well as a bruise here on her left lower leg.
And then the last photo, 2233. I'm sorry, one more after that. What are we seeing here in this photograph?
In this photo, we can see the bruises I described earlier, as well as the inside of her left ankle. We're seeing 2 additional bruises.
And if we could see photograph 7794. What is shown in this photo?
This is an image of her left leg, again showing the 2 bruises close to her left ankle and then additional bruises on her left lower leg.
And then 7775, please. What are we seeing in this photo?
This is an image of her right arm extended, and I have the image focused on her right bicep where there was 3 small bruises.
And in terms of bruising, are you able to tell the age of a bruise by looking at it?
No.
Can you tell whether it's a fresh or an old bruise?
So generally speaking, we can appreciate the color of bruises. So red, blue, purple bruises tend to be bruises that occur more recently, and as they heal over time, they start to take on a yellow or green appearance.
And the bruises that you observed on Cora's body, how did they appear?
They all had versions of red appearance to their shapes.
So because they had red appearance, does that mean that they are fresh wounds?
They occurred recently.
And again, you can't tell how they occurred or what the exact time and date they occurred.
Correct.
This is an important qualification in the testimony, and it is easy to miss. The witness is describing the bruises as having a red appearance and therefore appearing relatively recent, but the witness is also very clear about the limitation. The appearance alone cannot establish the exact time, date, or mechanism that caused each individual bruise. In a courtroom, that distinction matters enormously. An injury can be evidence without answering every question surrounding it. The witness can document location, appearance, and measurements, but determining exactly what happened requires the court to consider the medical evidence alongside everything else presented in the case. Notice how the questioning is narrowing in on the neck injuries while the smaller bruises on the arms and legs remain less specific. That creates a contrast between evidence that may carry different levels of significance. So the big question for viewers is this. When you hear medical testimony like this, should the jury focus more on the pattern of injuries, or on the limitations the expert openly acknowledges? That distinction is about to become even more important, because the next section moves directly into the neck findings and what the medical examiner believes they are consistent with.
Is there any information you can glean from the location of the wounds where some of the bruises were close together, like the 3 on the knee or the 2 on the lower right leg?
No, I can only document where they are and their measurements.
Okay. Now, if I may have a moment.
Sure.
Going back to the injuries on her neck, what do those tell you based on your training and experience, when you're trying to determine the cause of death, what do those wounds tell you?
When I see a ligature furrow that is horizontally oriented in association with significant petechial hemorrhages, those findings are consistent with a ligature strangulation.
And what is ligature strangulation?
Again, a ligature is an object used to apply external force to the neck, and a strangulation is when it is done by someone else.
And when that happens, what effect does it have on the body? How does it? What is the mechanism of death?
So Ligature strangulation results in a category of asphyxial type of deaths. Asphyxia means that the body is deprived of oxygen, and in this case, specifically the brain. So when you have compression on the outside of the neck, blood is how oxygen is delivered throughout our body. So the right side of the heart delivers blood to our lungs, where during breathing and respiration, we then put oxygen into our blood. It then moves to the right side of our heart and gets pushed out to our body through blood vessels we call arteries. Once the oxygen is released at its targeted site, it then recirculates to the right side of the heart through blood vessels called veins, and the process starts all over again. It's a continuous circulation. But when you have compression of the neck, first and foremost, your airways reduce, it's compressed. So you can have a reduction in your ability to breathe or complete inhibition in your ability to breathe. When you have compressions of the veins of the neck, the blood cannot drain from the head, and so then the blood actually has a backwards flow of pressure that meets the arterial blood, and that results in an increase of blood pressure within the blood vessels, as well as an overall increase in intracranial pressure. And with the compression of the artery, there's no oxygenated blood being delivered to the brain.
And as this blood is gathering in the face and head area, is that kind of causing the same type of pressure as a balloon filling up?
Yes, or like a water pipe as well.
Okay. And what happens as that blood pools and causes that pressure in the face and the head?
What normally happens is, first and foremost, the brain just has a reduced ability to take in oxygen, and in the smallest vessels in the face and brain, such as capillaries or venules, they are subject to rupture.
And as that pressure is building in those veins and are rupturing, is that painful?
Just like our blood vessels run throughout all of our body, there are nerves throughout all of our body as well. And so there is a component of pain present until loss of consciousness occurs.
And how long can it take, or does it take, for loss of consciousness to happen?
I cannot put a specific time on it for the interval. There's multiple variables to consider in a case-by-case basis. The type of ligature used, the force of the ligature used against the neck, as well as the intensity and duration of the altercation. However, in situations where there's complete oxygen deprivation, loss of consciousness can occur as early as 10 to 30 seconds, with brain damage beginning at the 1 minute mark and irreversible brain damage and subsequent death occurring around as early as 5 minutes, again with the caveat that there are variables that might accelerate or decelerate that time frame.
Now we have reached one of the most consequential parts of the medical testimony. The witness has explained that the neck findings are consistent with ligature strangulation and has described how oxygen delivery to the brain can be disrupted. But notice the careful language surrounding timing. The witness does not give one guaranteed countdown that applies to every situation. Instead, the testimony repeatedly emphasizes variables, including the type of ligature, the force applied, and the intensity and duration of the struggle. The witness then gives an estimate for how quickly unconsciousness can occur under complete oxygen deprivation, while also stressing that the timeline can vary. That matters because courtroom evidence is not simply about dramatic numbers. It is about what those numbers actually establish. The prosecution is asking the medical expert to explain the potential progression from compression to oxygen deprivation to unconsciousness and ultimately to irreversible injury. But the expert is also acknowledging uncertainty where certainty would not be medically justified. And now the questioning gets even more specific. How much pressure is involved? What happens if someone struggles? And whether stopping and restarting the pressure changes the timeline. Those answers could become critical to how the testimony is interpreted.
Is there a type of constant pressure that's required to cause that loss of consciousness?
Ultimately, once the brain has a critically low level of oxygen, a loss of consciousness will occur. It takes an average of 4 pounds to compress the veins of the neck and an average of around 10 pounds to compress the arteries of the neck.
And so if someone's squeezing something or pulling something around the neck at that 4 pounds or 10 pounds of pressure in a consistent basis without any resistance, does unconsciousness happen faster?
It could occur faster, yes.
What if someone's resisting or struggling or pulling away? Could that take longer?
When the body is in a state of stress, you have a stress response that demands an actual increase in oxygen utilization by our body. So in the presence of an increased demand with a decreased amount being delivered to the brain, it can accelerate the timeline to loss of consciousness.
What do you mean by accelerate the time to loss of consciousness?
It's obvious what she means. No, overall, you can ask.
It would just make it occur faster.
And so if that pressure isn't constant, say someone struggles and is able to get free a little bit, and then you have to tighten it again, does that make it take longer?
Sustained.
You said anywhere from 5 to 30 seconds. What are the factors? I'm sorry, you said 10 to 30 seconds. Is that correct?
Yes, for loss of consciousness.
What are the factors that are at play for whether it's 10 seconds or 30 seconds?
Again, there's multiple variables. So the force of the ligature against the neck, the actual ligature itself, and the intensity and duration of the altercation.
And once someone loses consciousness, do they immediately die?
That question is crucial because it separates two events that can easily become confused: loss of consciousness and death. According to the testimony in this excerpt, they are not necessarily the same moment. The witness explains that if oxygen deprivation continues, the brain can continue suffering injury, and the body may remain alive until it can no longer sustain the lack of oxygen. The testimony also emphasizes that the exact progression depends on the circumstances. That is why the earlier discussion about pressure, resistance, duration, and interruption matters. The medical examiner is not presenting one simple stopwatch-style formula. Instead, the testimony is describing a physiological process and the factors that may influence it. Then comes another significant statement. When asked whether someone who becomes unconscious from strangulation could simply wake up if the strangulation stops, the witness answers that without intervention it is very unlikely. This is the kind of testimony that can carry enormous emotional weight. But legally, the jury still has to evaluate it together with the rest of the evidence. And just when the medical discussion seems to be reaching its conclusion, the attorneys pivot towards something completely different, whether the witness previously gave an inconsistent answer.
No, so if there's no intervention, the brain continues to have a lack of oxygen, and so until the brain cells start to die, it's irreversible injury to the brain. The person is alive until the body can no longer sustain the lack of oxygen.
If someone is strangled to the point of unconsciousness and the strangulation stops, can they wake up?
Without intervention is very unlikely.
So do you recall testifying previously that when asked if a person were to use a ligature around someone's neck to the point where they pass out?
But, counsel, we've had that answer, right?
It's an inconsistent statement.
This is your witness.
I know, and I can impeach with an inconsistent statement.
I see it's sidebar.
And that is where this excerpt leaves us, with the courtroom moving from medical evidence into a potential credibility issue. The testimony presented here focused heavily on injuries to the neck and other parts of the body, the significance of a horizontal ligature furrow, and the medical explanation for how ligature strangulation can produce oxygen deprivation. The witness also acknowledged important limitations, including that individual bruises could not be assigned an exact age or specific cause simply from their appearance. The testimony about unconsciousness and death likewise included multiple variables rather than one guaranteed timeline. Finally, the attorneys began addressing what they described as a possible inconsistent prior statement from the witness, with the issue apparently moving toward a sidebar. That distinction is important. This excerpt does not contain a final verdict or final ruling, so we should not pretend that one has been reached here. What we do have is a significant evidentiary exchange involving medical findings, causation, timing, and witness credibility. The bigger courtroom question is how the jury ultimately weighs this expert testimony against all the other evidence in the case. What do you think? Does this testimony strengthen the prosecution's position, or do the experts' acknowledged limitations leave important questions unanswered? If you found this case as shocking as we did, make sure to hit that like button. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping courtroom breakdowns.